on Instagram. So if you want to pop in, and then I'll add you so we can be kind of chatting about this stuff through both. Because right now I'm just
so
sitting here. What?
We just went live right now here on the actual.
Oh, okay,
live.
I see it. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we've got Instagram going as well. So Blaiser's just going to take a second here to get in here, and then we're going to be live. So lots of people joining in. Great to see some of these names here.
All right, send a little request, and people can see my ugly mug on Instagram, which is awesome.
Here we go.
But yeah, basically, just to recap quick, the reason we decided to do this was a lot of questions come in over the last, kind of weeks and months. We had a lot of questions coming about off season and what can we do for the off season? How do we, make the off season? And what should we do? And Mitch and I were just talking about. We worked with a lot of the NHL guys, and actually, Mitch, you'll have to turn your Instagram down probably, just because that'll be good. Yeah, there you go. It's better.
That's
good.
Big tech guy.
There you go. I'll turn mine down too. But basically, we're talking about the NHL guys and how they had like an extended off season. They had this off season that went basically season got cut short in March. They came back, they worked out, trained. The guys went back to the bubble, played in the playoffs, and then they came back again, had another off season, and then went to their season. So that was a bit of a mess for them for sure. And then with a lot of the younger guys that we had, I felt bad for the junior guys. We're in Ontario here, so the OHL players unfortunately had like a 10-month off season, where they're still going. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable, yeah.
Happen or when they were going to be able to get back to it. So it was really, really weird. But I think the off season is a big, big time. I know for me personally, when I played, the off season was massive as far as making gains, getting stronger, working on certain things that I needed to get better at for the next season. And that's kind of the stuff that I wanted to chat about today a little bit with you, Mitch, when we were kind of talking the last couple of days about doing this, just kind of putting together some ideas on kind of helping players and parents, coaches, whoever's working now on just stuff that they should be focusing on. Because I think a lot of times there's a lot of white noise out there where there's a ton of stuff that you can get caught up in, where you see these posts or you see different things going on and you think, oh my God, I got to do this. I don't have a wobble board. Oh my God, I don't have a Swiss ball. And it's okay. Like, you're going to be okay. Right? So just relax. You're going to be fine. So I think that's one of the big, for anybody who doesn't know, Mitch Stewart's kind of our head strength coach here with Total Package Speed, Strength, and Conditioning, and works with all the NHL athletes with him and Trevor and Josh and Maddie. And so they've got a good understanding from kind of the NHL guys all the way down to minor hockey. And then myself, I work with, a lot of different age groups on the ice as well as NHL too. So, but today we're going to focus a lot on kind of that minor hockey to junior and beyond type thing. We'll talk about a little bit of the pros, because it's always nice to kind of talk about the pros a little bit, just because that's where everyone wants to go. So kind of, going after them a little bit. But Mitch, how you doing? I've been rambling for a little bit here. Sorry, but
yeah, I'm doing well. Been spending lots of time in the home gym, getting into TPH a little bit, recording videos. But this has been an interesting time for all of us. We've adapted and evolved a lot, I think, as a company that's trying to support hockey players in their development. And the way that we're able to do that now, whether we're kind of online or in person, has grown a lot. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it. So we've all been keeping busy and having fun with that, making the most of kind of the situation that we're in.
Yeah, totally, man. It's been insane. And for anyone who's kind of checking in and sees on the backside there, Mitch has got a bit of a home gym he's got at home that he's put together to keep himself, I think, sane a little bit too.
Yeah, more than anything, keep myself sane. Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
If anyone saw the sweat at home videos they're on Rogers TV, and we were tossing them out a little bit, this was a completely different space a year ago when I was recording those. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into getting something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing at home, which is nice.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah. All right, let's go. We'll go off one of the first questions that I've had, and it's come up a couple of times with different families I've talked to and players I've talked to and stuff like that. But the one thing is like practical training. So, and what I mean by that, and what's been related to me on this is basically, you see somebody, I've seen this video, I'm sure a lot of people have, and there's many videos like this, but you see someone like Connor McDavid doing like jumps over a hockey stick and stick handling at the same time, right? Not that that's a bad exercise, I'm not saying that, but is that practical? Is that a good idea for like a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old to do? Or should they learn how to like move their feet properly first, move their body first, and then, focus on the stick handling and the puck skills, and then tie it all together a little bit as they get, I'm not saying they have to wait till they're 15 to do this, but what's your take on kind of that practical training?
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation that we've had before, and I find it a really interesting one. And you kind of already touched on that. Everyone's looking at, what are the pros doing, or what have the pros done? How do they train? And then they try to replicate that stuff, but they may not be at that stage of development. And I'm big in the gym as well. Like, there's not many exercises that I'll say that's a bad exercise or that's a bad thing to do. But for reasons A, B, and C, it does not really fit what your goals are. And, coming back to that video you were speaking about, you see pro players doing crossovers over sticks while stick handling. And sometimes you see them do that and you look at the fun, like the way that they're crossing over, their contacts on the ground, their head position, the way they're stick handling, everything actually looks pretty good. But if you give that to somebody who's not able to cross over properly, or they're not able to keep their head up while they're stick handling when they're not doing all those other things, then it may not be appropriate for that person. So I don't think we need to put an age on, when you're able to do some of these different drills. But if you're fumbling the puck all the time, or you're just slapping the floor, and you're not really even stick handling the puck, I mean, then it probably doesn't fit into their development at that time. And a lot of it is just fun, extra trick type stuff. It's not even part of their real training. It's just like for fun, which is great. And it's awesome that they do that, right? But that's not the thing that they're doing to get better on the ice and in a game, which
totally,
I think there needs to be a clear distinction between, like, even in the gym, for example, I'll do workouts that are just kind of fun, but they don't really have support the training goals that I might have, but it spices things up. It keeps things interesting. It gets me moving my body in different ways. And that's fantastic. And I think that there's a lot of parallels to that with some of the stuff you see, in hockey and stuff that guys are playing around with. It's not necessarily game applicable,
right.
but you know what? It does allow you to challenge your brain and your body in different ways, which I think there's a ton of benefit to. But it also needs to fit your current skill level. And if you don't have the fundamentals of whatever it is that you're trying down, then it's probably just more of a, an unnecessary thing to be working on.
Yeah. Well,
what are your thoughts there?
I think that's good, man. I think like some of that stuff is just fun. Like going through a speed ladder, stick handling is fun. Like that, there's nothing wrong with that for sure. But I think if you're trying to get like better hands and you're doing that, then maybe that's not the best way to get better hands, right? Like maybe the best better puck control is maybe just work on puck control and focus on that piece of it. But to add some funny workout or some different things to work out, I think there's no problem with that at all. But I think that's the thing that parents and players have to understand, though, right? Is there's if you really want to get a better shot, then shooting, standing on a wobble board or standing on a Swiss ball probably isn't the best way to get a better shot. You know what I mean? Best way is working on it on your feet and then on your roller blades and then, progressing to making it more game applicable or ice applicable. And then for sure, man, if you want to stand on a wobble board and stick handle or pucks, no problem. Like it's great. It's kind of fun. It's challenging. But I don't think that's going to help your shot get better. It might get better a little bit just because you're shooting pucks and you know what I mean? And you're having fun doing it, which is great. But if you're really focusing on certain skills, I think you got to really kind of hammer those and really stay, in tune with basically what you're doing,
Yeah. So something you brought up there that's really, really interesting. And I've done a lot of research on, there is actually a lot of research out there on it, is unstable surfaces. And there are definitely applications for unstable surfaces. A lot of them are based on proprioception and in injury recovery. So recovering from like an ankle injury or something like that, doing some work on unstable surfaces to work your proprioception is really good. But for your shot specifically, when you take a shot, you're generating force like through your entire body, and being connected to a stable surface is very important. So I would say shooting off unstable, and this is a really good point though, like shooting off unstable surfaces, I don't think in many contexts is a great idea, because you're going to change your mechanics because you don't have something to press through that's stable. And on the ice, you're pressing through something stable, your feet, your skates. Whereas stick handling on an unstable surface is a little bit different because you're not generating the same level of force through your body. So I still don't think unstable surfaces for those things are really great in any context, to be honest, other than being fun. But like the crossovers, ladders, all that kind of stuff, well, if the mechanics on the ladder are good and the mechanics of the stick handling are good, I think it's a fun way to challenge yourself. But the unstable surfaces stuff is in the training world is a very controversial area. And there are applications. I'm not saying that And we do it. Like standing on a Bosu ball is not bad. But in certain scenarios, it may actually be bad because it can change your mechanics for, say, your shot. Like if you're trying to shoot, but you're not on a stable surface, it could actually change the way you're your mechanics, which is not ideal. But there are contexts like we'll do single leg squats, or RDLs, all types of different single leg patterns while balancing on it. But if you're generating force through your body, like in a shot, I would rarely recommend doing that. That's my perspective on
it. Because I agree. I think if you're trying to work on your shot specifically, standing on a unstable surface is hard to learn how to shoot the puck properly. Now, if you have a great shot, you want to challenge yourself, no problem. But when a player's shooting a puck on the ice, to your point, I never thought about it like this before, but a player's never going to shoot a puck when they're like coming down the ice wobbling, or they're on 1 foot wobbling. If they're on 1 foot, they're going to be catching an edge, and they're still going to be stable enough to get power, if that makes sense. Like if I'm getting hit on my shoulder and I'm going to shoot, I'm not, my skate isn't going, my skate's going to be on my edge, and it'll be stable, even though I'm on one edge. You know what I mean? It looks crazy when a player does, and you're like, oh my God, he's like, going away from the net on one edge and he scored, but they're in a pretty stable, as far as, let's say hip to knee to ankle to their foot. You know what I mean? Like really
to the ice. Yeah.
They're not wobbling is what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? So,
and the connection between the blade and the ice is always a solid. Like it's not, both surfaces are hard is what I'm saying. So you can have an unstable ankle, and that's not great. And there's certainly, and that's where using unstable surfaces may be good for proprioceptive purposes. But yeah, to your point, exactly. You're stable when you're releasing that shot, or it won't be a good shot.
Yeah. All right. That we went into the weeds there. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah. You fell asleep on that. Apologize. I'm gonna answer a question. We got a question from Reg Dunlop, and if anyone doesn't know who Reg Dunlop is, he used to play for the Chiefs in the movie Slapshot. He was a player coach, wore the nice leather. But anyways, tag name or his handle is Reg Dunlop, which I like. Old school reference right there, which is good. Watched that movie many times on a bus trips everywhere. So. But and I'm gonna read this question because it's actually kind of funny, but it makes total sense. So it's like see if anyone else can follow this. Right? It's kind of like a riddle. So if a player wants to play for Team A, and Team A tryouts are after Team B tryouts, okay, and he may get an offer from Team B, but the player wants to play for Team A, how should this player handle this? Which I think, like, does everyone follow that? So you got let's just put it like, let's say Team A's got tryouts. And Team B, basically at the end of the day, so Team A's got tryouts after Team B, but he wants to play for Team A, but Team B might offer him a card. So you could have a guaranteed spot on Team B, no problem, but he might get cut from Team A if he doesn't take that spot. So is anyone following that? So
yeah, it's a tough situation.
I think the biggest thing for players is, if you really have a place you want to play and you're really, you're dialed in on, I really want to play on this AAA team. Let's just call it a AAA team. Let's pretend it's reversed and he really wants to play, double A, but the double A tryouts are after the triple A tryouts. And he's not, so he's not sure if he's going to get cut and he's not going to have a place to play. Right. So I think at the end of the day, for these players or for any player in these situations, I think, you got to kind of measure yourself on where you are. So it's a conversation with mom and dad. Hey, mom and dad, I really want to play on team, A, but team B, so you got to really kind of figure out where you want to play, number one. And then number two, look at the strength of the teams. And, if you really do have a chance of making that team that you want to play on. So, you could end up, by not going with team, let's say by not going to the team that really wants you and going to the team that you really want to play on. Yeah, you could end up not having a team, which is going to be a tough one, right? I think the other thing too, not knowing enough of the context of the question, is how good are these teams? Is there a big separation between the two teams? Meaning, is one of them a AAA team and is one of them an A team? Because then that's a huge drop off if you don't make that AAA team, So I think, and this is something that happens a lot with players and families too, where you get caught up in those tryouts and, especially when, let's say there's a bunch of, let's say all the same kind of level. So a bunch of double A teams that you're trying out for. And, let's say for instance, in this area, Brantford's going to offer me a card for sure, but I really want to play for the Knights, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make the Knights. So do I take the card with Brantford and play for them, play AAA, or do I just wait it out, try out for London and then see what happens, And I think one other thing, Reggie Dunlop, that I'll add to this is, what's the fallback plan? So let's say that there are two AAA teams that he's potentially going to be trying out for, or she's going to be trying out. If he gets cut from both, then is there a good team to go to after that? And then if not, then that might rethink of, okay, just sign with Team B and just play there instead of playing with Team A, So Hope that kind of answered your question, but I like how you put the question. It was a good riddle. Thanks, Reggie.
It's a common kind of issue too, isn't it? I always hear players talking about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Players want to play in one team, like, that their best team or with their buddies, but then a lot of times other teams want them. And it's that, you're kind of stuck in the middle of like, oh, do I sign with the team that really wants me? Or do I, not try my luck? Do I try hard and try to really make that AAA team, So I think, looking at the strength of the teams, at the end of the day, man, if you really want to play on this AAA team that you really want to play on, then go try out for it, man. Go bust your hump and try to make that team, and then see where the chips fall after that. Right.
Totally.
I'm going to bring in Wade. I got Coach Wade. So Wade Russell, who is also a skills coach, works with a variety of different players. And I wanted to bring Wade in just because Wade does a lot of stuff right now with players virtually. So a lot of online shooting. We're in London, we're in Ontario, we're shut down. So we have no rinks open. We can't even golf, can't do anything right now. So we have a lot of players that are doing virtual shootings, virtual stick handlings, things like that. So I wanted to bring Wade on because he's got a great perspective and he's been working. We've been locked down probably, Wade, 3 times now, probably.
Yeah. It's coming up on a year. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
You can't do this, but you tried to get into the Instagram one, but you didn't see a request. If you go into it, we don't want to spend too much time on this.
Yeah, it just says request to join, and then I hit that, but that's about it. So I won't fiddle around.
Do that and then hit it again. I might have missed it, so do that and then hit it again.
Okay.
And then if that doesn't work, then sorry to everyone on Instagram. We got 15 people tuning in on Instagram right now.
Hot. Yeah. All right, I got a question here. I'm gonna get to before we get to what we've got here, but I got one from Jim Gorman who asked, my 9-year-old is a fast skater, but he's not the fastest runner on land. So what exercises would be good for him, like hill sprints perhaps, or things like that? So it's probably, pretty quick skater on the ice. And then, and I played with a ton of players like this who could fly, like fly around pretty good on the ice. And then, maybe weren't the fastest or even the most coordinated off the ice. You know what I mean? Like, and you think of some guys
totally.
With Mitch, but what kind of advice would you give to this father? Boy's 9 years old, he's young, right? But still kind of getting those years where he's getting into kind of AAA or the more competitive hockey. Mm-hmm. Obviously, what kind of stuff would you, go ahead.
At 9 years old, we could certainly start working on some fundamentals for speed training. Now, what I think a lot of people may not appreciate as much, and is that there are a lot of technical aspects to sprinting that may not be recognized as much as like on the ice, how much technical pieces there are to skating quickly. So there's a lot of times teams will have power skating coaches, or coaches will, address different types of things about getting low and how their stride should look and the mechanics of the stride, which is going to contribute immensely to their speed. Whereas whenever they're doing speed training off the ice, a lot of times all it is like ladder drills and then just sprinting. So my advice would be to do things like A walks, A skips, learn things like fast legs. So we're learning drills that strengthen the feet, ankles, and hips in a way that it's going to translate to sprint speed off the ice. Because I imagine if you're part of a hockey team that pretty well any hockey team, definitely at a AAA level, is going to address to some degree, whether it's with the team or with private sessions, whatever, the mechanics of skating. So without knowing a ton about the situation, my guess is going to be that more effort has gone into learning the mechanics of skating, and there are many parallels between skating mechanics and running mechanics. But sometimes it's hard to draw those parallels without having some coaching on how to do it. But again, fundamental exercises for sprinting are things like A walks, A skips, fast legs are getting a little bit more progressive, foot rudiments, things that will strengthen the ankles and the hips specific to a sprint stride, rather than just sprinting alone. You mentioned hill sprints. That could certainly be part of a program, but it's not necessarily going to address weaknesses that could be contributing to a slower speed off the ice versus on the ice. So learning the fundamentals of speed off the ice.
Yeah. One thing I would recommend, and I've just seen this firsthand with players, and is players starting to work with a sprinting coach. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's working with Olympic athletes, but somebody that, maybe it's a high school student. It could be a a track and field player or a track and field athlete that maybe is in the university, maybe you know somebody or through somebody you can find someone. But we have Josh Kirkpatrick who's one of our strength coaches, and he's worked with a couple of our athletes on just running mechanics, and it's crazy how running mechanics translated to on ice. And like the better they got at running, the better they were at skating, meaning the faster the recovery was on their stride. So that made them quicker. It was unbelievable. Like, and I strongly recommend any player, like any parent has a young player who's slow. And we all kind of went through those stages where we were slow, Wado. No, I'm just kidding. But I think honestly, man, searching out basically I say, I don't know, Mitch, what you think, but I say kind of like a track athlete. Cause whether you're,
Yes, yeah. And it's harder to come by than you would think. Like Josh has been unbelievable with our speed, the components of our speed training, and just so everybody knows too, like the percentage of all out sprinting that happens within our speed programming is not that much. There are a lot of drills. There's a decent amount of tempo running and a little bit of all out sprinting. So that's what I've seen, and what I see a lot is when people want to get faster, they go to a track. They do 100-meter repeats, 50-meter repeats, maybe 400-meter repeats, but they're doing it with so many flaws in their stride. And that's where the drills address this stuff and develop strength, again, through feet, ankles, hips, core, just the mechanics of fluidity between moving your upper body with your lower body, and all of those fundamental concepts of stride recovery, foot contact, ankle, foot strength. Those things are also important for skating. So in our speed programming, there are a ton of drills. Absolutely, there's some sprinting. A lot of that sprinting is at a tempo. So at a 60, 70, 80% effort of max effort sprints. So there are so many misconceptions, I would say, around what good and true speed training is that will translate from off ice to on the ice. And again, Josh Kirkpatrick, his background in track and field and athletics in general, most recently bobsled, which most people may not recognize the importance of speed in that sport, but it's tremendous. And the stuff that he's taken from his athletic background and brought that to our players has been, like you said, it's been unbelievable. But just so everyone knows, it is a ton of drills and not a ton of sprinting. And we can leave it kind of at that.
Yeah, because I know, like from personal experience, I'm a guy at the track running hundreds, like with no technique, just battling. I wish I hadn't known this back then, right? But
so don't get me wrong, that stuff happens, and we do that stuff, but it's not the bulk of the program that I think most people would assume that it is.
But it's very similar, Mitch, and Wado, you've taught on the ice a ton. So it's very similar to somebody coming up to me or Wade or whoever said, hey, I want to get faster. I want to work on I want to be faster. I want to be more explosive. Okay, well, you got to learn the technique of starting first. You got to learn the technique of how your body's moving first. Like and it's like anything, right? You're not going to get quicker until your technique gets better. You're not going to get stronger at benching or squatting until your technique gets better. It's the same thing. So sometimes those drills are boring and you think they might kind of suck, but man, if you buy into it and you put the time in, it's unbelievable the changes that you can make. So I know again, we're going to get super long winded here at times, but I hope that answers your
question. Really pushing this point home though. Like the concept of progression and starting with fundamental movements, whether on ice or off ice or in track and field, it's just so important, and it's talked about, but to be honest, it's often misunderstood even in the context that it's talked about a lot of times. So we are drilling this home, but it's so important.
Totally. All right, Wade, I'm going to bring you in on this one here. So basically, again, coming back to like parents and mostly parents that have asked these questions and stuff like that, but what kind of like, and I'm saying this because we don't have ice right now, we can't get in the rinks. This is just for us personally. So if you live in somewhere in the States or another part of the world where you do have ice, awesome. I mean, that's wicked, but we don't really have ice right now. So what are some of the things that you've had success with players, kind of working with them virtually as far as shooting, puck handling, things like that? And what are some of the things that players can really take advantage of right now if they have a home shooting area? And again, these shooting areas don't have to be elaborate or crazy or full of, synthetic ice. It could be small little areas, but what are some things that you would recommend to players to work on and some of the inefficiencies that you see?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You know, like it's a year of these now that I've essentially been doing kind of live Zooms on and off, depending on what our protocols are. But at the beginning, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, they're all moving to online learning. How much are they going to even want to tune into me, a guy talking to them through a screen late at night? But their engagement has been incredible. So it's one of the things that I would kind of encourage people to think about is a lot of the times I think people deter themselves from really kind of leaning into at-home development because their space isn't necessarily optimal or isn't flashy. They don't have a ton of tiles or a really good net or high ceiling or whatever they might kind of think of. But what I know what I've been doing is I've had athletes that literally only maybe have 4 tiles of space. And to me, although that's a constraint that can still promote a lot of different things that I'm looking for and trying to develop in these players. So for example, one is posture. Like we talk a lot about posture with our players. Like before I even have them shoot a puck, I'll just have them work the puck around their body, stick handling with their chest up, shoulders back, bum down, and just getting into that kind of hockey player position that we talk about just before they even release it. And what's cool about kind of the tight space is it forces you to get that top hand. I'm trying to get myself in the frame here, but try to get that top hand up and out, which is kind of a skill that we look at quite a bit when developing just basic puck control. But it's a unique kind of situation because everybody has different things that you can kind of work with. But the biggest thing that I would kind of encourage people to think about is see the space, even if it's small, is still something that can promote creativity in that player, right? Like I remember stick handling a golf ball on the carpet. That was kind of hard as a kid. It maybe gave me a little bit better touch. And then being in the driveway with a hockey puck, that puck stuck. But just kind of enjoying the learning process has really been trying to kind of get kids to work on because there's only so much I can do, right? Through being on Zoom and whatnot. But in a way that's pretty cool too, because I asked them, you know, how did that feel? Like, what did you feel when you released the puck on the net there? And today I had a kid go, you know, I've noticed all my shots are going right. Like, is my blade opening up? And
Right.
boom, like that's a great breakthrough moment for that kid. And I didn't even necessarily teach him that. I just kind of guided him towards that answer. So it kind of gets into some stuff that I've been working on in school with constraints and more nonlinear approaches. I can't give every answer to the kids, especially in this format. I can't put their arm in the right spot or cup their blade with my hand, but I can guide them more with kind of questioning and some cues to kind of get them into that right direction. So I know kind of going back into more specific things, I think the biggest one would be, you know, really getting them confident in having their head up. A lot of toys and contraption out there actually force your head to be down, like stick handling under something or with lights flashing up on the ground. Again, don't get me wrong, you look down in hockey. Connor McDavid looks down at the puck every now and then, but he knows when he can look down and his head isn't completely down. It's his eyes, he's scanning, he's looking up, down, around, everywhere. So I think that would probably be the biggest one that I would really say if you're doing anything at home, try to promote proper posture and having the kids' eyes up. Like I'll tell them, like one boy I've been working with in Zooms, he has a little flower on the wall for some reason. And every once in a while I'll yell flower and he's just got to look over, scan and spot the flower. Today I had another boy with some synthetic ice and it was just go to the end of your synthetic ice, shoulder check twice, scoop the puck, come back for the net for a shot. But just building in things that actually will transfer into the game, things that are being coached at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and even as they get older and more competitive. So, but I think a big deterrent is the space that people have. But there's actually a surprising amount you can do in quite a confined, non-really developed space.
I agree, man. I think like, you know, and you think back or you think to anyone who's scrolled through Instagram in the last year has seen, you know, hitting a golf ball in your backyard and try to buy one of those. They're sold out pretty much everywhere, especially in the first couple lockdowns when things got tight. Like everyone bought those. And it's like, you know, but what are you working on? You can't see where your drive went. You can't really tell if you sliced it or not, right? You're working on your technique. You're working on just striking the ball straight. And same thing with when you're shooting pucks. It doesn't have to be a crazy big lane or a sick, you know, net at the end of a long, so you can take one-timers and slap shots. Like could be a small area. Who cares if you even get the puck up? But some of the stuff that you're addressing, I think, man, when you talk about head up, that is the biggest thing for me right now with young players, especially is getting your head up and looking around. You know, and you look at, you know, you mentioned Connor McDavid, but man, how many times does that guy look at passes and shoots or looks off a shot and passes, right? And he's not the only one. I mean, tons of players do it, but I think that's huge, man. So if you can work on that stuff now, when you get back on the ice, hopefully those, you know, that's kind of those little habits are entrenched, and that's going to change how you kind of play the game, you know, as you bring those habits back to the ice type thing, right? So, and if anyone does have ice, obviously, man, keep working on that stuff when you're on the ice because it's so huge.
Awesome. And that was the first thing I noticed when I was watching that video with Connor McDavid doing the crossovers over the sticks and stuff like that. He had it, like his head was up. He was looking around while he was doing it. And I'm like, in this context, it's there's probably nothing wrong with that. real quick, wait, can you try one more time to get on the Instagram? Because we've had a few people asking. I put my headphone up to it while you were talking. They said they could kind of hear you, but not very well.
Okay. Yeah. I hit request and then I'll try to leave and join back in again.
And I'll get to another I'll start another question here too, so you guys just kind of keep your ears open while I'm going through it here. But
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love what Wade was saying and we see this in the gym too. And I think this speaks a lot to the progressions that we use both on and off the ice, is when people start to recognize things that they may be doing incorrectly without you having to say it. I think that's huge. And that's really what we strive in the gym, is for people to really feel, what is a good and what good position versus a bad position, a good rep versus a bad rep. And they can do that on their own because we're teaching them concepts, not just exercises. So even if it's a new exercise, but they understand all the fundamentals and concepts that revolve around that exercise, then they can be like, oh yeah, I felt that I did this or I did that or whatever. Because like Wade said, you can't teach every little thing, but there's so many domino effects within training, both on the ice and off the ice. So if you're hitting the right dominoes at the right time, then I think that they can recognize things as you progress to more complicated parts of training as well, which is pretty cool to see as a coach.
Yeah, no, I 100%, man. I think it's huge.
Did you try again, Wade?
Yeah, it pops up. It says request to join, but then for whatever reason, when I hit request to join, it won't allow me to click it.
It's because you got an iPhone 5. You got to upgrade.
Yeah,
your iPhone 5.
It's got to be it. You can't even click it, eh?
No, it's being weird.
All right, guys. Wade, I'll keep put my phone up or my headphone up.
If anybody does have any questions, fire away. Go ahead and send them in. I don't want to keep anyone on too long. We already been about 30 minutes, so we'll go for probably another 10, 15. By the time we're done our long-winded answers, probably be
another hour.
Yeah, another hour. We'll keep it going. One thing I wanted to touch on a little bit here is kind of age-specific, or age-appropriate, I guess, exercises. So, for instance, selfishly for me, I've got a 7 and 8 year old. And right after we're done this, it'll be about 9 o'clock. I'm going to go upstairs, wake him up, and whatever exercise he's telling me to do. No, I'm kidding. But like, let's say you did have young kids, because there are some young kids that want to work out. You know what I mean? And maybe they see their dad working out. It's like, I want to do that too, which is totally cool. Like, and I'm really big on, if your kids are going to work out, I think it's really important for it to be a fun experience. Rather than running them through a bagger. If they want to do like one rep of like, great, that's awesome, good job, buddy.
Yes.
At young ages, right? So I think that'll translate more.
When you're saying young too, what are you defining as young? Because I think
young. And I'm only saying this because I have young. Like I've got a 7 and 8 year old, and like down and do a push up or do a pull up, or you know what I mean. They're not going to work out. They're not going to do they probably would if I kind of pushed it, but I don't want to push it with them, right?
No.
So, but I'm saying, like, I think 7, 8, 9 kids are like really getting into it, which is awesome. And some kids have no interest in it, which is totally fine as well, right? But what are some like exercise that you would kind of recommend if someone's son came down at 8 years old and you're doing, let's say squats on a squat rack? Well, no, you're not going to put them under a squat rack, but what are some things that like a younger kid could start to do? And I guess, so what age for young kids, then when would you start kind of introducing weights or kind of, more?
So it's a great question. And I think the first thing you said is the most important, especially at like 8 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old. It's got to be fun. So I think what we try to do is just put our fundamental type exercises, so whether that's hinge patterns, squat patterns, lunge patterns, those types of things, into a circuit with hockey skills or with maybe volleyball skills or whatever sport it is that they play. So they may stick handle, focus on all the fundamentals of stick handling that you may be working on, and then go and do 10 lunges and then come back and maybe take a couple shots if they want to put that stuff in. But I don't like formal strength training. I don't think is really necessary until at minimum like 11, 12, 13. And then we're working on fundamentals. And then we can start to move into more strength training at 14, 15. And I know there's a lot of research that says kids at like 8 to 12, they can do strength training. But I just personally, from my experience with this stuff, I don't see a ton of value in it. I think there's way more value to being an athlete. And if you're interested in sport and development, then play baseball, play volleyball, play different sports, and try to learn how to move your body in those ways, how to rotate, how to swing a golf club. But if they really want to put stuff in, they may do, like I said, a couple shots and then some A skips and then a couple shots and then some lunges. And at that age, they are at a point where there's a little bit of a spread in kind of their focus with exercises. So I think that introducing some details is good, as long as they're not putting themselves in a position where they're going to hurt themselves, which is for, squats. You can do it a lot of different ways at that age. You're probably not going to hurt yourself. But it's a really tough age because there's different, just different capacities on what they want to pick up from a detail standpoint. And me specifically as a strength and conditioning coach, I largely focus on those things. So it's very difficult for me to adapt to training. Not that I don't like to do it, but to adapt to training 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, not because I don't see a lot of value in it at that age. I think they should be swinging a golf club or doing something different, shooting a basketball, whatever. But I know that if you see your parent doing it, then, if they're doing a barbell squat, then maybe you can do a plate squat, a really light plate, like a 5-pound plate. You're squatting down, trying to hold good mechanics. Hopefully your parents doing it with good mechanics, because they'll probably try to mimic you, that kind of thing. I had a question here too. Should young kids be jogging or doing sprints? So it's not a bad question. It's a good question. I think that building work capacity at a young age is really important. I think that there's very few kids that would want to get onto like a distance running program and really enjoy it. They may want to go for a run around the block, and I think that's fantastic. Building the aerobic system through those early ages is very important, but that doesn't need to be jogging or sprinting or anything. That just needs to be playing. So like if they're out on the park and they're playing and they got 10 friends out there and they're chasing each other, like that is a form of building the aerobic system. So it's like, again, at that age, you don't need to look at, as an adult, we look at strength and conditioning and training as a very regimented thing. Like we do squats and we lift weights and we jog and we sprint and all that kind of stuff. But for kids, it's different, man. It's they just need to play. And when they're playing, they are building their aerobic capacity. So I don't think they need to jog necessarily. Like, you're going to go for a 2K jog today, but if they're out playing tag, they're jogging. If they're out playing road hockey for 5 hours, they're jogging while they're doing it. They're sprinting a little bit. They're building the capacity to do work without even knowing it. And I think for young people, young kids, that is the best way to do it, is to build work capacity. And that's what it is, aerobic capacity, work capacity, without really knowing that you're training. You're just having fun and you're getting more fit and you're building your system. But you're not putting yourself inside a box and jogging.
Well, I think the other thing, if any parent's not 100% sure, like that Mitch is crazy or not, put a Fitbit on your kid when they go back to school. Like, and if you have a bit of an active kid and you're not sure, you're not doing enough, you want to play AAA next year, just put a Fitbit on him or on her. And like, they'll come home that night and they'll go play with their friends after school, hopefully, whatever they're doing. Right. And then they'll come home and ask them how many steps you have. I guarantee they're over 10,000. And some of them are probably 15, 20,000. Like, because the point is the active kids, you know what I mean? That are active. They're playing at recess. They're running around. They're sweating. So
they're building their work capacity. They're doing it. So like, just finding fun things to do where you're moving is really important. Like our youth speed and agility, we do have programs. The youngest we do is like 7 to 9, which is pretty young. But the way that we structured it is fun. We're doing obstacle courses, we're crawling, we're jumping over things, we're doing all kinds of stuff like that. And there are very small elements of technique that we tie into it. We may, like, if they're jumping, try to land with your knees in line with your hips, and we might just give them that one little thing. And then aside from that, they're more or less they're kind of playing. But it is tough. They're constantly moving. They're developing their core muscles, their shoulder stabilizers, all that stuff while they're crawling, regardless of whether it's a mechanical type crawl. They're doing that stuff. So it's so important to get them moving at that age, and their motor system is learning with every move that they make. So moving with maybe some intention, but mostly fun, is really important.
That's huge. And then kind of quickly, I know this is kind of probably not a quickly question, but like, when would you introduce weights? Is it more dependent on like body type, maturity, puberty, things like that? Or,
So progressive overload to me is progressive overload at a certain point. So I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50 years old, or, 9, 10, 11 years old. When you come in, we're doing a lot of the same exercises that we're doing the same exercise with that 50-year-old as the 10-year-old. We're learning how to hinge. We're learning what it feels like to load your glutes and your hamstrings to a hinge pattern. You got to be able to feel that stuff, because when you put load on your body and you're going through a movement, you should be intentionally loading a fairly specific pattern. So if you don't know what that pattern feels like unloaded, then it's reckless. And that's where weightlifting often does become reckless, because people have no idea how they're loading that position. They're just looking at somebody do it and then hoping essentially that their body will load the correct muscles to stabilize and produce force through that exercise. Whereas our fundamentals are designed to break things down to a very bite-sized kind of level, and they learn to feel the muscles associated with a single leg pattern through a squat, a single leg pattern through a lunge, a squat pattern on 2 feet, a hinge pattern on both feet, a hinge pattern on 1 foot. And once they can do all that stuff, this is not age dependent. It's once you can control your body through these patterns, we can slowly start to load these patterns. And again, it's progressive overload. Once you can control this level of resistance, then we'll add a new level of resistance. Once this position is heavy and we're no longer gaining benefit from this. So like for an example, this might be a trap bar deadlift. It's a relatively simple exercise from a motor control standpoint. So once you learn how to hinge, you learn how to squat and stabilize your spine, you can start to do a trap bar deadlift. But if that gets to a point where you're lifting a ton of weight, and then we may hit a law of diminishing returns with that. So we might change that exercise to something like a straight bar deadlift, which is more complicated from a nervous system standpoint, and then maybe cleans, and then maybe clean and jerk or whatever it is. But like, it's just progressive overload. So it's knowing where to start, how to recognize once they've developed a certain level of competence with that level of exercise, and then you load those patterns to a point that's appropriate for their mastery. And then once you reach more mastery, then you add more load.
I think that's
the process.
So I think, and I want to get to a comment that came in too. But really quick, one thing I want to clear up though, Mitch, with this is, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily the age the athlete is at that weights are bad or good. Doesn't matter. It's how they move and how they are able to move. Like, so if a player can hip hinge properly, if a player has good, balance, good support, and they've got some of those fundamentals, there's nothing wrong with adding 5 pounds or 10 pounds to that movement. Because I think what happens a lot of times too, man, is I go out in the garage with my son and I give him a dumbbell that's 25 pounds. I'm like, lift this over your head. And like, okay, he can do it. You know what I mean? The kid over his head. It's like, well, and I get dad wants, okay, I want my kid to get strong, but like, really, man, like, so I think that's the biggest takeaway here is, you got to make sure that the players or the athletes understand how to move, know what they're doing, can control their body properly with, a stoop can before they get to that 25, to that 25-pound dumbbell, right? So being able to control the body a bit.
I had a really good comment. So this is the same person that asked about the, should my kid be jogging or sprinting? And he said, and then after that answer said, that's great. And then he said, I think a lot of it has to do with feeling pressure or feeling that your kid will be left behind because other parents are talking about all of these exercises and private trainers and all that stuff. And I think that's a fantastic point, because I obviously see that a lot. And complete transparency with this, I do think it's important to have a professional that you can talk with. And that doesn't need to cost you $10,000 or even $1,000. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just somebody you can be like, hey, take a look at, the different movement patterns, whether that's on the ice, off the ice, that my kid is able to do. What types of things do you think he should be able to do at this stage of his development? And then we can assign a program that he could do at home if he's super motivated. If he's not motivated, then we don't really want him to come in anyways, because he doesn't want to. But you can work on this stuff at home, and it doesn't need to cost a ton of money. Because I know that the pressure thing with parents talking about what all their kids are doing, all this stuff, like, and I do think having a professional in your corner is important, because I do see, and I'm sure you do too, a lot of kind of mistakes, call them mistakes, that people are doing. They're trying to get ahead. They're working really hard. But then you see it and you're kind of like, oh man, I don't know. I don't think that's the best approach. And I think we're in a position of having worked with so many people, and it's from a young age all the way up to an NHL level, which I think is pretty unique that, we've had players start with us at 10, 11 years old, and we've seen them through every offseason to the point where they're 20, 21, 22, 23 playing in the NHL, which is pretty cool. So we've seen that long-term development. It's not just a snapshot that we're seeing. And again, it doesn't need to be like a huge commitment to have a private trainer. I think it's just important to have someone you can consult with about, where's my kid at? What types of things would you suggest that you think he should be able to do at this point in his development? And that's it. And we can give stuff to do. So yeah,
100%, I totally agree with you, Mitch. The one thing I want to say on that though too is I 100% even on ice stuff. A lot of parents are anxious, man, because they're that little Johnny next door is getting privates every night. He's working out. He's got a trainer. He's at the gym 3 days a week. And I've said this a lot of times, so I sound like a broken record. But and the players that you talk about, Mitch, that we've been fortunate enough to work with from 10, 11, 12 to the NHL, they're good kids, man. They come from good parents. And the other thing too is when you're looking for a strength coach or somebody to talk to, even not even spend money with, just to talk to, ask around and find out who's good and who's reliable and who you can trust, because you want to get right advice. I know a lot of the guys that we had a chance to work with and girls, man, how often do you hear, how often did we hear from, and I don't mean to name drop here, but like Bo Horvat's dad or Travis Konechny's dad, like he never called me and said, hey, why is he not squatting more? Or why is he not scoring more goals? Right. They just kind of trusted that, we're going to do what we need to do. We communicated, but it was like, so I think seeking out the right people and finding people that mesh with your player, like your son or daughter as well, that they feel comfortable with them and vice versa. And again, like now with these apps and if players are motivated through video, through virtual stuff, like you can do a whole workout at home with not a lot of equipment and get feedback from coaches. You can do a whole shooting session like Wado was talking about with Coach Wade or whoever, and get a lot of great feedback and stuff that you can take to that next training session you can work on your own. So I think money is it's just, number one thing is developing good people. I think that's huge. And we often miss this because we are trying to keep up and we don't care. We're going to run our kid ragged just to make sure that they're on the ice as much as as his buddy is. Right. And number two is just finding the right people to do your training with, because we talked about it here now, and it's come up in a couple comments too, like keeping your head up and making sure that you're, bringing those skills back to the ice the right way. It's so true. Like, you see a lot of skill sessions with players with their head down the whole time, or never shoulder check one time, or they're going through pylons and sticks, and you know what I mean? It's just stuff that's not even applicable to games. So I think it is huge to seek out the right people, but also just trust that, that who you're going to work with, the advice you're getting is the right advice and kind of what you want to, how basically helping your player go in the direction that they want to go in. We got anything you want to add to that at all? So
there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like I love that Mitch mentioned play, like especially because again, kids can start lifting weights at 8, but the window to really get the big gains comes at 11, 12, 13, 14. Like it comes later. Like, and when you talk about something like, for example, hockey IQ, what is hockey IQ? Well, we could sit down all day and break it down, but to me, at the very least, it's understanding what your skill set is in the moment, like what you are afforded the ability to do, and then understanding where you are in space. Where do you always constantly have to understand where you are in space? When you're playing soccer, when you're playing baseball, when you're playing basketball, when you're playing a random game that you came up with your friends in the backyard. Like play is so crucial to their development of proprioception, spatial awareness, decision-making. Like kids that are good at passing in hockey are good at passing in soccer. They're good at passing in basketball. They're good at passing in lacrosse because they understand the space, the timing, body language cues. So I think there's a lot of good stuff that you guys touched on in there. And I know even going back to the virtuals, like some of them aren't even shooting lessons, like a little bit of it's mentorship and just kind of talking to kids. And one thing I've been big on, and I'll call it steering, because it's not like I break down the science behind it for them at all, but I'm really trying to promote behaviors in kids that are intrinsically motivating. So Mitch even mentioned mastery. So the two biggest things that you can do to intrinsically motivate, where the kids are motivated from within. So that's that kid that at 8 a.m. just kind of wakes up and goes to shoot pucks. You didn't ask him to do anything. Like that's intrinsically motivated. Mastery and play. So do they want to just become better at the skill for the sake of becoming better? Do they find that to be rewarding? And then do they just enjoy the playing aspect of it? And if you can encourage kids to appreciate those two things, like yesterday or on Tuesday, we had that crazy snowfall. We've had a few now in the last couple of days. And a couple of my kids were shooting outside. That's where their setup was. The board was slick. They couldn't get shots off. It was sticky with the rubber. And I just said to them, I'm like, hey, like, how bad does the ice get when you get off of it? I was like, I don't know, like pretty bad. And I'm like, well, you know, get used to kind of shooting and like just enjoy trying to get better at it. Like try to figure it out here a little bit. And he started to battle a little bit more and the shots started to get better. But again, what I was trying to do is steer him towards that mastery and that intrinsic motivation, because so much of it is, you know, everybody's looking left and right. Like we do the wave skates all the time, right? And kids are bombing down the ice and they look left, they look right, and they're just sizing themselves up. And I think we all know where that kind of comes from. There's certain pressures and maybe conversations parents should be having more in private. They're letting kind of leak out while the kid's in the other room and they don't necessarily know it. But I think just getting kids to enjoy the process of getting better and allowing them ample, especially after when we get out of this, allowing them ample opportunity to play. Let them go play, give them just enough structure so they know that it's a game of capture the flag, and then just let them play.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man. I think that's really
good.
Wait,
I'll move John's not too much, but I love what you said about like them being able to feel progression, like feel that they're getting better. And that's why it's so important, and we harp on this all the time, but just having a progressive structure that they understand is so important, because they can see that they're kind of checking off like, you know, oh, I can do this now. I can do this now. I can do this now. And it builds a ton of confidence. You see it all the time.
And then they enjoy it. And then when they do kind of get to the hard stuff at 15, 16, 17, and you're getting them under a barbell, then they enjoy that and they're ready for that. And they're not kind of already shying away from it, or they don't have that confidence. I think it ties into so many things. So
we'll let you go, Dwayne. I know you had another question there.
No, it's good.
I'm just rambling now.
No, that's good, man. Good. You know, we'll go one more kind of topic question, whatever. And again, if anyone out there has any questions, feel free to fire away, whether you're on Instagram or if you're on any of the other 72 platforms we're on tonight. But yeah, if you have any questions, fire away. But I was gonna say, like, if you guys thought about it, and we'll go through all three of us real quick, but what would be kind of your keys to a good off season? So you're starting your off season, you finish your season, you come home, you know, I mean, right now it's a mess. So you've had your off season's been 10 months. But let's say now, okay, I want to get ready for September. Like I want to really hammer it. I've got, you know, let's be honest, we got May, June, July, August. We got 4 months, which is huge, a lot of time. I really want to hammer the off season. I want to be ready for my season coming up. And so what, you know, and again, I know we talked today a lot about like 9, 10, 11-year-olds. Let's say you're 13, 14, you're in the OHL, you know, you're a junior age kid, whatever that is. But what would you guys say some of those keys to having a successful off season would be? So we'll start with you, Wado. You fire away first, and you have a couple ideas, or Mitch, if you go first. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's
way to go first.
Okay. I'll kind of give two. Like I think in the COVID world, it's a lot trickier, right? Because normally I would say something along the lines of, I think they should take some time off, whether that's a month and a half to 2 months, depending on their age. I think there should be another sport in there involved somehow, assuming that you can make that work with scheduling and stuff. But in the COVID kind of thing right now, and what we're staring down the barrel of now going into the summer here, I think like three things. I think getting outside is huge. Just getting the kids outside, getting them moving again as much as you can. They open up parks again, thankfully. So getting outside, playing quite a bit. I'm going to throw in stretching. I think just trying to stay mobile and building that in, I think is really big. I think a lot of kids don't, because they maybe aren't training yet a lot, or they don't really have that. They go to a place like TPH where they have that type of stuff, the accessory stuff kind of built into a program. I think it gets neglected a lot. And then as they grow in the off season or their bodies kind of change, then their flexibility, their mobility, you know, we talk a lot about the ankles for skating and stuff, then that's kind of maybe out of whack for them when they get back on skates and towards the end of summer. So I think getting outside, I think stretching is really, really important. And then sleep. I think kids need to get their 8 hours of sleep every single night. I think it's really important at that age. And in a routine, I think you could probably stretch out that sleep into just a routine across the day, I think is really good for them at that age. But those would probably be my three things. And I'll let Mitch go obviously more into the strength and conditioning component and everything. But in COVID, yeah, I would say get outside, play, stretch as much as you can, try to stay mobile, enjoy that part of it, and then get to bed and get some good sleep, get some good rest.
Okay, wait, Mitch, before you go real quick, Wade, you mentioned sleep, and I think sleep is like massive for old buggers like me. I think it's massive. And I think a lot of times parents get frustrated with like keeping up with other players, being on the ice so much, all this stuff. But then, you know, their kids are up till 10, 11, 12 playing video games. You know, it's like, well, man, you're doing all this other stuff, which is great. And then you're letting them stay up with devices in the room, you know? So, and I'm not saying every parent's doing this, but I think, man, as parents, especially with those younger age kids, we got to really like hammer things back and, you know, set some boundaries for our kids. Cause to your point, man, if you're not sleeping well, pretty much everything else you're doing is not going to get accomplished the way you want it to. Right?
Completely throws their self-organization out of whack. Like and I'd be interested to get Mitch's thoughts about, I'm working with younger kids. Like, I don't ask the parent at all, like how well did he sleep or whatever, but I can almost tell when a kid slept really well between like a treadmill session and the next one, because it's literally like their body downloaded what we had talked about last session and did it. Not to take any credit away from the kid. Usually that child is usually listening really well and is kind of engaged in the learning process, but it's remarkable. You can just tell they come, they're fresh, and 2-3 days later, and it's their whole different skater after 30 minutes on the treadmill. And it wasn't really me. It was just because their body, they get rest, supplemented, and good nutrition, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I'll touch on the one thing both you guys said that I think is just so important is to not lose a routine. So like I don't think you need to get in the gym right away after the season. If you're excited to get in the gym, if you were to come, it would be far more like, and it would be anyways, but recovery modalities, kind of like you said, we'll call it stretching, but restorative type stuff. So there'd be a combination of stretching and some strengthening through shorter ranges, different ranges, not necessarily loading with barbells and stuff like that right off the bat. But routine is important. So even if you're not going to come in the gym, then still have a good sleep cycle, still get up in the morning, maybe you're going for a walk and doing a little stretch after at home. So still work towards being an athlete. Like don't completely throw all that out the window and then go to the gym and start from, what feels like ground zero type thing. So it's just really important to stay in a routine. And then I think it is important though to feel ready to come back to the gym. And right now I'm speaking more specifically to like OHL players, NHL players. I think that it is important to feel like you're ready to hit the gym again and you're not forcing yourself to go back, but you should maybe put a time limit at the beginning. The most time I'm going to take off is 4 weeks or something like that. Right. And then after 4 weeks, maybe you don't want to go back. Be like, all right, I hit my time limit. But if after 2 weeks, and this happens, like, after 2 weeks, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go back. I want to start getting in the gym. We're going to start the way, with fundamental exercises, a lot of regeneration type stuff. So it's not going to be a bagger. It's not going to be hard, but I think you just need to feel ready. But more importantly is just as soon as the season is done, I think it's important to stay in a routine and not just completely throw all that away. So stay in a routine, set a timeline as to kind of what the maximum amount of time is that you're going to take off. I think it's still important to work towards being an athlete during that time. But you don't need to go to the gym right away.
The one thing I would kind of go in a little bit different than what you guys talked about, but same kind of idea. Yeah. In the off season, what I would do and what I would recommend to players is pick a couple areas that you want to focus on that off season. So if it's in the gym, maybe I'm a bit heavy and I'm always heavy. I gotta learn how to eat better. I gotta learn how to sleep better. And I want to get trimmed down, or I'm a skinny guy and I got to get bigger. I got to get more muscle. I got to put on muscle mass. I got to figure out how to do that. Or I'm not flexible. I got to get more flexible. So I think like picking one or two things that you really want to focus on, putting on strength, power, whatever that is, your strength coach. So communicating that with, and again, it doesn't have to be, when I'm saying this stuff, I know everyone's like, oh my God, so my strength coach, I got to spend $10,000, $15,000 for the summer. No. It's not like that. It's just, but communicate that with whoever you're working with or whatever program you're seeking out on. This is what I want. And same thing with the off ice. I think if you're a hockey player and you want to get better in the off season, there's gotta be, because I know the NHL guys have stuff they want to work on. So there has to be in minor hockey, a couple things or a couple parts of your game that need to improve, and focusing on those areas. You can touch on a bunch of different areas, but your main focus this summer is to get better at, snapping the puck and making, adding movement to the puck before I shoot it. Or my main area is, get my head up and things like that. So finding a couple different areas of your game on and off the ice you really want to hammer and focus on. And I think that'll give you a little bit more focus in the off season to really kind of, because a lot of times you look at the off season and we're like, man, I'm 14 years old. I'm 5'2" and $110. Like, it's like, whoa, man. Like that's, I got a long way to get to 6'2", right? So that's daunting. So if you kind of break it down into digestible pieces, we're like, I just want to put on 10 pounds. I just want to get my bench up to this, or I want to get my whatever, my sprint time to this. I want to get my shot harder. I want to get my shot quicker. Then it's easier to digest and a little bit easier to focus on. So.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I mean, we always sit down with the guys and have goals set, like kind of set goals so we both understand which way things are going. It amazes me sometimes when players are starting with us, and they might be even at an OHL or sometimes even pro level, and talk to them about what they want to improve. And sometimes they don't have an answer right away. But I know every offseason after they have been with us, they'll come back and they do immediately kind of say, okay, this offseason I want to work on this, and this, because they know it's coming, that we're going to talk about that stuff. But yeah, that's huge. It brings purpose to what you're doing, and yeah, that's huge.
Okay, I got questions. If anyone has questions, we'll stay for a while. We got nothing to do. No one's got wives and kids here. We're good. I got questions that came in. I got Reggie Dunlop's got a second banger here. Reggie, how to increase a goaltender's reflexes, which I think is a great question. And Mitch, this is something too that we could even talk to like Zach or Jason Van Spronson or a goalie coach or something like that about as well. But is there anything that you can think of even on the off ice or the kind of the training side of it, aside from dad going outside and just firing clappers from the end of the driveway on his kid and going to move his gloves as fast as he can? But is there any other way to help kind of get those reflexes a little bit better for a goaltender?
So it's definitely going to change with age. And something that Wade touched on earlier is I think in the beginning, goalie or not, it's amazing how much you learn from just, say, playing basketball, baseball. So catching a ball in baseball, receiving a pass in basketball, all that stuff at that age. I'm not saying if you're an NHL player, you should do more, play more baseball in the off season. But at a younger age, learning to react to different objects like that is incredibly important just in developing your senses that way. As they get a little bit older, I think tying in reactive movements to drills. So with Hauser, like Michael Hauser was with the Knights this last offseason, we do a lot of stuff where like I'd stand behind.
Now, right?
What's that? Yeah. He was So we do stuff where I'm standing behind him, he's at the wall, and he may be doing a quick feed exercise or something like that, and I'll throw the ball at the wall and he'll have to catch it, where he's only reacting from say 2-3 feet away from the wall, and he doesn't see when the ball is coming or what side it's coming from. So stuff like that is huge. So again, it definitely depends on the stage of development, and then also specific to on ice. I mean, when you're wearing your equipment, it's going to be totally different than when you're in the gym. There's things we can do in the gym, like that's one example of the drill that I just mentioned. But being able to react to a puck with your equipment on in the net is obviously specific to hockey, and it's important that you're mixing it up that way. And again, that's where Jason, like Van Sprons, all that kind of stuff, Dave Rook, any of those guys in London will be able to address that stuff specific to on ice. But certainly with goalies, we do a variety of different drills in the gym, like that one to work on it.
Man, would you recommend, like, if you're doing reactionary drill, it's a reaction ball, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, like a ball with a bunch of lumps on it, you kind of throw it, it kicks out different ways, or you're doing something like that where you can't see it coming and the ball's coming off the wall behind you, or like someone's throwing it from behind and you react to it. Would you encourage goalies to eventually kind of wear their uppers? I know they're going to look crazy and a little bit odd wearing their uppers, but wearing their uppers and their blocker and catcher and kind of working those movements in their gear a little bit. Like, that's something that you might
absolutely
recommend?
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic idea. That's a circumstance where doing something like that off the ice, where you're taking a specific element of on ice and bringing it off ice, I think it can bring a ton of value. I mean, we're doing a lot of this stuff within a strength and conditioning session. So we're not doing that at the gym at all. But to recommend someone to do that, I think that is a great idea, because moving in your equipment and having a blocker side and a catch side, like a catcher side, it's totally different than if you got two hands and you're free and it's a ball. So bringing some specificity to it that way, I think is fantastic.
Awesome. All right, I got one more here from Ty Maxner. We all remember Big Ty. Yeah, so Ty Maxner came to us a couple years ago. Actually, he was in London. Now he's in the Toronto area, and I'm going to assume he's back home now. Over in he was overseas in, I think it was Japan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Ty was awesome, man. Really good player. Worked his tail off. Got tons. He was really good when he came, but got tons better and awesome. But anyways, he said, "Hey, boys, how's everyone doing? What can I do to be able to improve my hockey mind? So being smarter player in this lockdown situation. So watch games, ? I think watching games is huge. And I think when players watch games, don't just watch the goals, the hits, the highlight plays. Watch how a winger's opening up for the play. Watch how, oh my God, look how he shoulder checked before he made that pass. And it may not turn into anything, but take a look at that stuff. There was a play the other night. I'm going to post it. Actually, I'll try to post it tonight. It was Crosby to Rust. It happened. It was a goal 2 nights ago. And Crosby got the puck, fired it cross ice. It went behind Rust off the wall and then jumped in and Rust caught it in stride and went in for a shot. But the whole play was so minimal, but it was awesome. It ended up being an unbelievable goal. It worked out really, really good. But again, it's just like both guys knew what was going on. most guys would have turned to grab the puck and messed the play up, and he just let it go by him on the backside, picked it up on the front side, and blew by the defenseman. So I think watching games for those purposes, looking at what those little plays are, I think one of the other things too is not being afraid to like rewind a game. So what I mean is, you know, you're watching a game, there's something cool that happens or something like how that puck get in there, how that puck get out, and rewind it and watch it and rewind it again and watch it and see like how the whole thing evolved. And I think those are little things that are definitely going to help you. Buedo, you mentioned it earlier. If you're working on skills at home, whether it's puck handling, shooting, whatever it is, like get your head up, move around, get your eyes looking, right? Look off your shot. Even if you're shooting on a stationary net, like, or a stationary shoot on the net, looking away, shooting on the net. But the more you can practice that stuff now, I guarantee it's going to translate when you get back on the ice. You're gonna have to work it into your game when you get back on the ice. But yeah, just keep working on those little things. I think the biggest thing, and you know, tell me what you think of this. I feel the biggest thing with hockey IQ, one of the biggest things is on ice awareness. And you know, you said it earlier, like knowing where you are in space, right? But knowing where you are on the ice, knowing who's around you. I've got another clip of Nylander, and I'm not a big fan of Nylander, but man, is he good at the puck. And his like he's unbelievable, man. His head's up all the time. He's looking around. He's protecting the puck. Like, and I don't love his game, but man, his skill set I completely appreciate. So I think just on ice awareness is massive. So if you can work on that during this lockdown, I think that is huge. And wait, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to this as far as the on ice side.
Yeah, a couple of things. So I know, and especially with the younger kids, I wonder almost too about watching games. Like I 100% agree that's the way it should be. And I'm bad for this too, but attention span I know is really hard. So one thing I would encourage them to do, like get a notepad and either write down just things you see, whether it's the timestamps or whatever, or like pick a skill and just try to record how many times that skill was done in the game. For example, like how many times did a guy catch a pass and shoot in an NHL game, in the Toronto Winnipeg game right now? And just because it kind of gets you to think about it a little bit more and really be in tune to it. Because I think a big part of it too, especially for more elite players, is body language and picking up little subtleties about how guys are moving and adapting their hands and things to kind of make plays happen. You know, and I know I'm more visually inclined. So seeing something, it really kind of sticks with me. And then next time on the ice, I can kind of replicate it. But finding that thing that really, where you're actually extracting something out of the game. Like I think watching is good, but are you just staring and kind of waiting for something eventful to happen? Or are you actually really, really kind of watching, I would say is a big one. Another one too, again, a little bit more catered to that higher end player, but in these times, visualization isn't actually a terrible thing. It when done enough and when kind of regimented well enough, like there's actually research that shows it can actually supplement actual physical execution of the certain skills and things like that. Now, I'm not expecting a kid to sit there in a room and, you know, like you see guys kind of sticking out with their eyes closed before a game, but even just if you have a little bit of a stick handling space, try to use almost your imagination and really put yourself in the environment. As silly as it sounds, like I say this to young kids that I work with too, like I know that's a wall with a flower on it and there's a picture of your mom hanging on the wall. But like I had a kid today and it was a ladder and we were doing the shoulder checks and I had to come back to it. But there's a shoulders ladder. I'm like, that's Chara. And he's a big Pittsburgh fan, right? So Chara's on the Caps now. So I'm like, that's Chara. Like I want you to see him every time. Like just gave him something to actually latch his eyes onto. But trying to do whatever you can to put yourself in whatever sort of environment you can create that is as close to competition as you can make it, I think is really, really big. And then like going back to the notepad thing, I remember being in minor hockey, Dave Bolin was billeting with one of our teammates' parents and living in their house. And he watched every game with a notepad and he took notes every single night. And all the parents were there were drinking and he was probably at the age where he probably could have snuck a few. And I remember me and my dad being like, whoa, look at this guy. And he was sitting there writing down every little thing that he picked up. And I think it was actually a Chicago game he was watching, funny enough. So, but
pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that all comes back to, just to sum it up, like be a student of the game, you know, like learn things from the game. And the game's always evolving. It's always changing. We're always updating how we teach skills and new skills that have come out and new things that players are doing that we're trying to adapt to so we can help younger players learn it. So try to be a student of the game, man. And I think that's huge and kind of how you approach it for sure. Well, boys, this was awesome, man. I don't know if anyone's got any last minute things fired away, but we had some great questions. I really appreciate the people that obviously came on. And what we're going to try to do is every Thursday at 8:00. We're locked down here for another 3 to 4 weeks. So we got nothing going on. We got not a lot going on as far as nightly sessions or being on the ice with teams or working, you know, unfortunately. Right. So we figured we had a lot of questions that were piling up on this kind of stuff. And we figured, why not do it this way? This will all be posted on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So if you want to check it out later, you missed a spot or you bounced in or out, no problem. You can always check it out whenever you want. But yeah, that's our plan anyways. And we'll try to promote it, you know, a little bit further out than like 24 hours before we do it. We'll try to get it out maybe like a week before. Like we'll start sending it out just so people know that we're going to be doing it. But yeah, we'll plan on doing this again next Thursday. So
and I'll figure out.
You guys want
I'll figure out the Instagram and try to hop on that on the next time.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
For sure.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad we organized this. Glad everyone could come out.
Yeah,
we're influencers now.
Everyone who checked in. What's that?
We're influencers now. Any celebrity boxing matches we want to organize?
I'm ready. I'll fight someone.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
See everyone later.
See everybody.
See ya.